The next couple weeks, we're going to talk about finances. And if you're first time here, you're going to leave and think, of all weeks for me to show up at a church, they're talking about finances. So we're going to collect your credit cards right now. I'd like the ushers to make their way down. Because you don't have a credit card. That's why you're saying that. Well, we're going to talk about money. Larry Burgett is a guy, he died of cancer about 10 years ago. But man, we still talk about him and we still lean on his words and the books that he's written regarding finances from a biblical standpoint. One of the things that he said that I think is worth mentioning today is that people don't have money problems. Money is a symptom. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. And there's a kind of an interesting way to think about this. There are two viewpoints of money in America today and really in the Western world. And that is this, that there is a biblical perspective and viewpoint regarding finances, and then there is an American one. Let me describe it. The American way of thinking about money is this: if only I had more money. That's the American way of doing it. If I had more money, then you fill in the rest, ... If I had more money, we are convinced that no matter what the problem, 99% of the time, we view it as if I only had more money. Well, I was listening to one of the great preachers on the radio this week, Pink, and she made a statement that I really like. Now, I like some of Pink's music, don't get me wrong, but she's not exactly the person that you preachers necessarily quote often on a Sunday morning. But she made a statement that I really like. I was listening to Sirius XM, and apparently she released an album or something, and so they were interviewing her, and she had just come back from Haiti, and she was talking about how the people of Haiti loved each other, loved life, and they had nothing, and how that struck her so in an unbelievable fashion. And so we think that it's just Christians. And although when you go and you've been on mission trips, I've been on many overseas, you probably have too, when you meet Christians overseas, you find that to be the case. But I'm here to say that it's not just Christians, because the American way of thinking is, if only I had more money. Here's the biblical answer. There's more to life than money. If you consider the difference between if only I had more money and there is more to life than money, that perspective and that difference, the difference that it makes in the way you do life and the way that I view life, the way I view people, the way I view church, the way I view everything in my life, it trickles down to almost every single area of our lives. Let me give you an illustration. I've done a lot of weddings, and this couple, they found me online. And so we met for coffee on my day off. We ended up at a Starbucks, and I'm sitting there waiting. I have my book and my little piece of paper ready to take notes. And here comes the most gorgeous couple I've ever seen in my entire life. This guy was 6'8". He was probably 250. He was chiseled. I just kind of just looked up and I said, "Hi, Goliath." And come to find out, he was a high-profile football player, and I didn't recognize him. And as we started talking, I realized that he was marrying a former NBA cheerleader. And so I'm looking at this couple, and I'm thinking, if I do this wedding, people are going to look and go, which one of these three don't fit? So I show up at this gorgeous venue in North Scottsdale, and the black Ubers, like all those big, huge Escalades, were pulling up and dumping off people, and they all had their huge, their hair pulled back and their tuxes, and I just felt like I was walking into a movie. It was amazing. And and as we did this wedding, it was fun, and they were great, and they were awesome, and they knew God, which is making it even cooler, so we could bring God into the picture of things, and it was just really an amazing experience. And they said, we want to gift you. And I said, wow, thank you. I appreciate that. And they said, but we'll need to contact, and I forget the guy's name, we'll call him Kurt. He's in New York. He manages our finances. And I'm thinking, my wife Judy is here in the Valley, and she manages my finances. So that's interesting. And so he says, can you put together an invoice? And I go, I don't know how. So I went on Google, and I go, create invoice. And it said, which number? And I went, 1. I guess that's my first invoice. And so I sent the invoice off, and not long later, a few days later, I received this money, this check in the mail. And I'm thinking to myself, I apparently need to do more high-profile NFL weddings, is the first thing that I realized. And then I thought I didn't quite understand this whole idea of talk to someone in New York and get money. And then it dawned on me, oh, he has a wealth management manager, and that's what he does. He probably manages several people's money. And with that in mind, I had this idea. I wanted to kind of play this thing out and let it trickle down for a minute. And I need a couple volunteers to help me. And first of all, Nathaniel, where are you? Nathaniel, come on up here. I know you hate attention and being up in front of people, but just for this situation, can you just do me a favor? Chris, you owe me one because I'm not calling you up. Yeah. So you owe me lunch. And then Nate, come Nate, follow her up here, please. Nate's last words to me is, I know you want me to be here today, just anything except on platform. Nate, come on up on the platform. I appreciate that. Nate is my good friend. Nathaniel is my good friend. And I want you guys to stand here for a minute here. And thank you so much. I know I don't like that look. Okay. So I want you to stand right next to Nathaniel. She doesn't bite hard. And so what I'd like for you to do is imagine this, that one of these two is a high-profile athlete. And so, Nathaniel, let's just assume that you are one of the greatest bowlers that ever lived, and that you just make so much money that you need someone kind of like a New York Stock Exchange looking guy. And so that's why I chose you, is because you've got that conservative banker look going on right here. And so then I want you to consider this. My family, we got together last night after the baby shower, and we all collected. I just told everyone, I said, go to your rooms, go to your wallets, everybody, grab all the cash that you got. And so the whole family came back, and we got like $20. And so then I called a couple friends, and then so together we came up with, I know, I've never seen this much either, it's $100. And it's, of course, it's not real, but it's $100. And so this is the most expensive visual aid I've ever used. So I'm going to give this to you. Judy said to bring it, it's got to come home. So that's the only, so take that. And so you're making so much money. You have all this money that you entrust Nate. And you have this fiduciary relationship with Nate, and you say, this is my money. I'm going to hand it to you. So I want you to hand it to Nate. Now, Nate's job is, well, don't get comfortable with it. And he's going to then take that money. Now, you don't have to worry about a thing, right? Because all of a sudden, you're out doing your thing. You're bowling for cash every Saturday night. You're bringing home the money. You give it to Nate, and Nate says, what? I'm going to take care of this. It's all taken care of. Here's the analogy I want you to think about. In our analogy, Nathania is not an athlete, but she's God. And Nate, he's not a banker. He's you and me. And I want you to consider something for a minute. The money that Nathania gave to Nate, to say, hold on to it. The only rules that she gave him is, we have to create a plan, and I want it spent upon my plan. It's my money. So Nathania comes back, and she says, by the way, Nate, I need that $100 back. And Nate says, ooh, about that. And she goes, what do you mean? says, well, I needed some things. And she says, well, what do you mean you needed some things? Well, I don't have the money anymore. And she says, how did that happen? She says, well, I just wanted some things, and I needed some things. And so I kind of went off and did my own thing. And I don't know about you, but that dog wouldn't hunt in my life. And I don't think it would for you either. And so we have God who says, don't take that too literal, Nathaniel. We have God who says, folks, the money that you have is all my money. And we're going together, we have a plan and we have an approach to spend that money. And so before you're seated and you're applauded, I need that $100 back because I'm afraid I might not see you again for a while. And I want you guys to thank these two for coming on up. Thank you very much. It wasn't so hard, was it? You're awesome. Thank you.
Judy wants me to give the money to
Yeah,
you.
I know she does. Tell Judy to get her own money. And so I want you to consider some things here today. And the first thing I want you to know that is our money is not our money at all. It's God's money, and our job is simply to manage it. I want to repeat that. The money that you and I have is not our money. It's God's money. And when God gives you a little, or if he gives you a lot, it's not yours, and it's not mine. He's asked us to manage it. Psalm 24, chapter 24, 1 and 2 says this: the earth is the Lord's, and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. In fact, I want you to read that with me. Psalm 24, 1 and 2, read with me aloud. The earth is the Lord's, and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. I want you to know that whether you're a follower of God or not, whether you've come to a place in your spiritual life where you have given your life and heart to God, and you have come to a place where you said, my soul, my heart, my life, my cash, everything, my 401k, my now a 201k, everything that I have, everything that I don't have, God, is yours. It's not mine. Whether you've come to a place in your life where that is true or not, it is true. Everything that you and I have comes from God. And there is something amazing that occurs when someone comes to the place in their life where they realize that their money is not their money, but it's God's. And they simply manage it. In fact, there's several things to keep in mind. Number one, I want you to consider these. Number one, it is easier to give away money when it's not your money. It is easier to give away money when it's not your money. Exodus chapter 22, 25 says this: if you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender to him, and you shall not extract interest from him. It's not your money. If the owner says give it away, what do? You give it away. You look for ways to give it. You don't look for ways to keep it. I have wrestled all week long with whether I should give this analogy or not. And the reason why I've struggled with giving this analogy that I'm going to give you, and I've decided to do it, is because what my concern is that you would somehow, whether it's through the internet, people watching who don't know me and know us, or you are here and you don't know me, that you might get the wrong idea that in some form or fashion that my family, me and Judy, are bragging by this story. You know me. 90% of my stories are self-deprecating. It's on purpose. I don't want people to ever think that I am all that, because I'm not. I go home, my family makes sure that I understand that every single day. Quite honestly, the elders and staff do a pretty good job too. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we needed a vehicle. We were driving a minivan that shouldn't have been on the road. And somebody in the church, I taught a young marrieds Sunday school class at the time, and we were a very knitted group of people. And someone got word that I was looking for a minivan for my family with 3 kids. They were a little younger, and someone came up and said, we need to sell our Ford Windstar. And I'm thinking to myself, I've seen that car. It's got rear air. That's like presidential. That's crazy. And they said, we'd like to sell it to you. And I did what you probably would have done. I kind of took a step back, and I thought, I can't afford that van. It's got 50,000 miles on it. I was in the paper a lot. I knew what that vehicle, 3-4-year-old vehicle with 50,000 miles, is worth, and I didn't have that kind of money. And because we had gone through Larry Burkett and we were using the envelope system and very careful with our money, we knew that we had a very finite amount of money to work with. And we said, man, that would be great. We love your vehicle. Please don't get this wrong, but we can't afford that. And they said, give us a number. And I went, oh, I hate when people play that, because I'm going to give a number and they're going to go, are you crazy? That's too low. I just see that playing out in my mind. And I thought, okay, this is what we could afford. This is what it's worth. And I don't want to disrespect them, but they did say that, and I gave them a number, and they said, done, it's yours. I couldn't believe it. So we went to the bank, we pulled out the money, cash. That's kind of how we've been doing vehicles for a long time. And I gave them the cash, they signed it off, and my family was driving this beautiful Ford Windstar with rear air, and it just blew us away, and we thought we'd hit the jackpot. Meanwhile, we had another vehicle that was still in good working condition. We could probably get $2,000, $2,500 for it. And God told Judy and I to give it away to a couple. Actually, what's ironic is that couple lives in Anthem. They have for quite a while. And so I called him up, and I'm going to just call him Dave for this story. And I said, Dave, your vehicle is in my driveway, and it dropped oil, and I want it out of here because my neighbors are going to get ticked having to look at it day and night. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you heard me. Your vehicle is in my driveway, and I am disgusted that you haven't come and got it. And he goes, have you been drinking? And I said, no, but I want it out of here. And he says, are you giving me your vehicle? And I said, hello, that's what I said. And he says, I cannot just take it. I said, I'll sell it to you for $1. And he goes, I'm on my way. So it's about 20 miles from here to there. He was there in 4 minutes. He shows up and he goes, and by the way, I've never told this story privately, not to mention publicly. This is the first time. And he said, we are blown away. And I said, you need to know that someone else loved on us, and I just want to love on you. And he goes, our family's thankful. And he went in his pocket and he goes, I don't have $1. His mother-in-law was there, and she goes, oh, I got $1. Gave me the buck. And they drove off. They drove it for about 1.5 years. He called me up, and he said, listen, our business is doing well, and it looks like I can afford a better vehicle for my family. And I was thinking, what do I do with this vehicle? And I said, dude, it's your car, not mine. Sell it, make as much as you want, give it away, trade it. I don't care. It's your car. Can you understand why I was apprehensive to tell the story? That makes sense, right? But I thought it was worth it, because you need to know that I was not giving out of this great wealth. It's just God said, that's not your car. It's my car. And I've given you a family to give that vehicle to, and I want you to do that. And I want you to know that there was something liberating about that in ways that I cannot even describe. And being a youth pastor, and for so long, the only income, so 5 of us and one small youth pastor income, we had people giving us things, and one time our dryer went out, and a set of youth workers showed up and gave us $200, and we were just humbled and blown away, and we went to Home Depot and actually got a new one instead of one that looked like it had about 100,000 on it. And I remember how blessed they were and how blessed we were, and now for the first time in a long time, Judy and I were at a place where we could give somebody an actual vehicle like that ran and that worked and everything, and it was unbelievable. The Bible says you don't lend it and charge interest and expect it back. It's not yours. Number one, it's easier to give away. Number two, hoarding is no longer a temptation. Hoarding is no longer a temptation. Debt to others is even worse. In fact, debt to others is hoarding someone else's money because it's not even your money to hoard. Romans 13 out of the Message says, don't run up debts except for the huge debt of love that you owe each other. And when you love others, you complete what the law has been done. Our money is not our money. It is God's money, and we're just managing it. And so when we hoard it, and we take it, and we kind of pull in as much as we have, and we don't let anyone in, we're hoarding someone else's. And my example is having Nate up here that says, I love all of this money coming in. I'm going to hoard all of this money. And when the owner, Nathaniel, comes back and says, I need you to write a check to my church or to the missions or to this family that's in need, and he goes, I'm sorry, I'm kind of collecting it, I'm hoarding it. It's not his money, and it's not your money. And when you and I get this foundational principle in order, when we understand that the money that we have is not our money, but it's God's money, it gives us this ability to give it away easier, but it also takes away from the temptation of hoarding it because it's not ours to begin with. Number 3, the amount we have, the amount of money that we have doesn't define us. The amount of money you have doesn't make us more important. Asset managers are not valued more because they have more money. Whether an asset manager is managing 1 million or 2 million or 5 million, it's not his money, it's all just zeros. You ask a banker who's been a banker for a long time, what's it feel to hold $1 million? And he says, you understand that it's not my money, right? I said, yeah. He goes, it's just money. It's not $1 million. It just happens to be a lot of paper because it's never going to go home with me. So it doesn't matter whether I'm counting hundreds or millions. It doesn't matter. It's not my money. The amount that we have doesn't matter. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. This is huge. This verse, if you get this, if we take this verse and we absorb this verse, this, I promise you, will make the biggest difference in your life than any verse that I read today. Listen, 1 Timothy 6:17. As for the rich, by the way, who are the rich? You need to know that you and I are top 5% of the richest people in the world. Of 8 million people who live on this planet, you and I are the richest. And so when you start thinking about who is the rich, you can't preach this like this when you're overseas, but to this group, no matter who you are, your potential for earning is greater than 95% of the people in the world. We were just in Ensenada. We went into the wine country, which was beautiful, and we met some friends that were there as well, and I started talking about the jobs. And one of the things that I learned is some of these guys that are working at that winery, 10 for 10 hours to 12 hours a day, depending on whether it's harvest, and it was harvest time when we were there, they were making a day, 20 bucks. And you and I run to Freddy's and drop 20s like it's nothing. And you walked in with that Starbucks, which was worth, I don't know, what are they, 30 a pop now or something like that. You're spending, and you and I are spending more on our coffee than the majority of the world have to live on. So keep that in mind. 1 Timothy 6, as for the rich, you and me, in this present age, charge them not to be haughty. Make sure that they remember that because of the stuff that they have is not a license to be haughty. And if that passage is ordained by God, as I believe it is, and that those words are applied to the church until Jesus comes back, which I believe it does, then my job is to tell you and to remind me to not be what? Haughty. When I turned 23 years old, I was a youth pastor in Ohio. And someone in the church there, a friend of mine, whose dad was the GM of this General Motors plant, General Motors and Chevy and such. And so he had outside of it, and he was the top guy. Outside of his window and in the parking lot, there were Cadillacs and there were trucks and there were everything from little Cavaliers to Corvettes, all in this row. And he knew that I was kind of a vet guy. And I was over their house one night, and he says, would you like for your birthday to have one of the Corvettes for a week? Okay. Because I think of others. And I knew that was important to him. What? So he threw me the keys to this brand new Corvette, and at the time it was like 1988, and I got in this, and it was a convertible. At least I think there was a top. I never saw a top because it never went up. And during that week, my friend Steve and I, we would joke. We'd be sitting in the office for like 10 minutes, and we said, don't we need to go to Cedar Point and check out prices for tickets for next summer? And he goes, and I go, I think so. And we get in the car and head to Cedar Point, the big amusement park there, which was about an hour away. And then he said, what would you think about doing a hayride like down in Columbus? And I'm like, great idea. In Columbus we went, and we drove and we drove and we drove. Have you ever heard the phrase, drive it like you stole it? I drove it like I owned it. I was sitting back, and I did the lean, and I cranked my Bill Gaither music. I was just rocking out. And I just drove that thing like I was it. I was all of that plus some. Till I turned it back in. And then I got in my 1968 Buick Skylark, which was just a rust bucket. And I said, God, why did I forsaken me? When Paul says to Timothy, listen to me, you tell the rich, my job is to tell you this, don't be haughty. You're not all that. You're just not. Because your money's not your money. It's God's money. Don't be haughty. Next one. Number 4. The pressure of protecting the money is now gone. Not only are we not to protect it, Our job is to do the opposite. It's to give it away. The pressure is not to protect it. Some of you have a hard time giving at the end of the service and offering. Giving an offering is more like tipping God. I'm going to throw him a 20. And I want you to know, this church doesn't need your money. Can I repeat that? Because this is worth you hearing twice. This church does not need your money. God does not need your money. It's not your money to begin with. It's God's. He doesn't need it. By you and I giving money does something to us, not him. And so when I look at this verse in Luke 12, it says, sell your possessions and give to the needy, provide yourself with money bags that you do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail. Listen, here it is. Where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. If you and I keep in mind that we are creating a treasure for heaven, no one, nothing, ever will be able to touch that, because our treasure is there, not here. It's not your money. And he says, sell your possessions and give to the needy. Okay. We'll do it. I'm on that. It's easier to give. Hoarding is no longer a temptation. The amount we have doesn't define us. The temptation to protect is gone. Number 5, the security in life shifts from money to God. By the way, security is never there with money, is there? I mean, when you think about the money that you have, the money that you and I have does not create real security. It only creates a pseudo-security. Now, it's one that we'll fall to, don't get me wrong, and it only bursts and pops when it's gone, because we have this false sense of security that it is our money and that we're protected by it. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. So those who love it will never be satisfied by it, ever. There's never enough. It's the same with power. At what point does power, those that need it for their identity, at what point does power give us all that our heart is satisfied? At what point do you wake up and go, I'm so content, I have enough money? When we love money. Now, we don't love money. We go, it's not my money. I'm just managing it. I may have some spending issues. I'll take care of those. But it's not my money. And so our security in life shifts from money to God. Why is it that Jesus says you can't serve two masters, God and money? Because there's nothing closer to God in this world than money. Because when you make money your God, it touches everything in your life. And you assume that it's going to touch everything in your life and bring a satisfaction that is just full and complete. And I love those who say, I'm just going to start giving more money when I have more money. That's like saying we're going to get pregnant when we have enough money. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And I didn't get permission to use this. They're in this room. But I had a family tell me recently that they believe in what they've been coming here for a little while, and they believe in what they're doing so much. And they've been given to this cause and that cause, and they says, you can start counting us in now because we want to start giving to this ministry because we believe what we're doing. And I'm humbled by that. I'm humbled. Because it's not about us. It's about them giving to God through us and entrusting us with that. Last point. Contentment comes from God, not money. And the real issue, the lack of contentment, is what we really struggle with. And you try to overcompensate by purchasing things, and sometimes things that you can't even afford. And Hebrews 13 says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. I've always liked this line in a Sheryl Crow tune. She says, it's not having what you want, but it's wanting what you have. And she's almost there. I mean, even it's not wanting what you have. There's certain things that we need to be giving up, right? Even that we have. But it's the idea that we're never satisfied with what we have. Let me ask you a question. One question. What is it that God has asked you to give and that you have wrestled with him over? Let me repeat it. What is it that God has asked you to give and that you have fought him over it? Some of you are very free with your money. Some of you have lived your life. I know some of you. I know it. I've talked to you. I know people who could live in much bigger houses. I know folks that have a smaller house than us and have tons of money, and I leave and going, I don't know if I'm doing this right, because that's an example that I can't get out of my mind. I respect that so much, is what I'm saying. What is it that God has asked you to give and that you are fighting him over? That's what I'm asking you. Because when you fight with God, you'll never rest and you'll never be content. Ever. I've never preached a sermon about finances to this church since I've been here. I waited almost a year to do that. Do you know why? Because you needed to trust me to know that I'm not trying to get into your wallet for us. You need to know that. I could insert about 10 different jokes right now. They're always in my mind. You don't hear half of them. And I'm here to tell you that it would be the most inappropriate thing, because everything in me, my heart screams, it's not your money, it's not my money, it's the money that we have as a church is not the elders' money, and it is not about us, it is not about what we're building and what we're creating. It is all God's money. And you know what is amazing to me and to the elders, to that board that I have that I just love, I love our board, is that every time we have a gift that is, whether it's small or large, we understand that God has entrusted us, just like Nate, to take that cash and to be so ever careful and right with it. And so I ask you, what is God asking you to do with your finances that you've been fighting him over? I'm going to ask my friend Billy to make his way up here. We're going to close in a song, and I can't get enough of the band, so I'm sure you guys are okay with that. But I want you, as we sing this song, I want you to contemplate that. What's God calling us to do? And by the way, so as we receive our tithes and our offerings in the back, this is not about extracting cash. This is about giving you opportunity to give back what God's already given you and to go back and say, God, this is more than a tip. And for some of you, you have never given a gift anything close to a tithe. And I'm asking you to consider that, because one of the things that's liberating is when you realize the money that I'm giving could be a very nice car payment, but it's not mine. Whose is it? God, thank you for an hour of just letting us be super honest about money, but really, God, a conversation we can just be totally honest, but also learn and be free and open. God, I pray that you would take each gift, whether it's a tithe or a gift or however, God, and I pray that you'd bless those that give. And and allow them to understand that they can be trusted with this group, but also, God, that this is not about us. This is about you reminding us that it's not our money. And God, let us be free with it and not hoard it, not keep it, but look for opportunities to biblically manage that money. And so take every gift and use it and multiply it in Jesus' name. Amen.